section of the sixth day International Conference on the topic Literature and its Impact on Women Empowerment. Today, we have an eminent personality with us as a resource person. I take immense pleasure in welcoming Mrs. Jayashree V. Murthy, founder, managing trustee, Stahi Theatre in Education. We are happy and uh, we are happy to have you with us, ma'am. I request Mrs. Jayashree V. Murthy to proceed the program.
Thank you, Anita. And my topic was women portrayal of women in literature and its impact. So, by Indian authors. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Ah. So, because of the time constraint and the whole thing, I can't take up so many authors. I have taken Rabindranath Tagore. How
Okay.
his women have, how his literature on women and how his portrayal has impacted. And I am the living example where I have been impressed by his portrayal and I have been following. And I also use these stories in my theatre for children. So, with your permission, I'll use only Rabindranath Tagore, his portrayal of women in the literature. Will it be okay? Yes? Okay. First of all, I would like to read his poem, which is very common and which is highly impacting, actually. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where, where words come out from the depths of truth, where timeless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. So this has really got into me for a long time. I've been reading this poem for a long time, and I also read it to school children wherever I go. So taking up women in Rabindranath Tagore's novels, short stories, or plays, or so many things he has done. His even his painting is on women. So many things he has used women, but the impact, the way he has depicted those times, 100 years back, he has gone into those, the way the women were living in those days. He has collected the facts and he is depicted in such a nice way. Anybody reading that will feel, uh, will connect it to you, to it. So I'll just have a few writings I have done and few collected from the net or reference, because I'm not a Rabindranath Tagore scholar or anything, but I'm reading his thing. Bimala lives under the shadow of a rich elite husband, Nikhil. Despite being high spirited, she has to maintain, she has to remain subdued in the role of traditional Indian housewife. With the arrival of her husband's friend Sandeep, Bimala finds a new hope of fulfilling her aspirations and falls in love, disregarding social norms. That is Tagore's Bimala from Ghare Bhaire. Born in 1861 to Devendranath Tagore and Sarada Devi Rabindranath Tagore, started writing at the age of 6 and went on to become the first Indian and the first Asian to win Nobel Prize for Literature for Gitanjali. Known vividly for his vast collection of poems, prose, plays, stories, novels, Tagore put women in the forefront in his works to convey feminism very strongly. Being a progressive thinker, his writings often were based on bold subjects that were far ahead of his time. He strongly believed in fighting for women's upliftment, using his pen as a weapon, focusing largely on emancipation. His writing campaign for women's liberation, equality, freedom, justice, power, and dignity and rights. Take Charulata. This has been filmed by Satyajit Ray in the same name, Charulata, a wife who remains secluded within the walls of her house and finds solace in her brother in law. Amal not just comforts her and brings out of boredom, but also influences her to write for newspapers. Charu's confrontation with her husband about her inclination towards Amal shows how Tagore put boldness in his character. In Naukadubi, Hema Nalini refuses to marry brother's friend uh, after Ramesh, her love interest, marries another woman. Another protagonist, Kamala, in the same story, when discovering that the person she is staying with is not her husband, immediately abandons his home and goes searching for the person she was actually married to. The female characters are shown strong enough to stand for their rights. Tagore took up the deprived life of widow Binodini and her sexual emancipation in Love Quadrangle Tale, Chokarbali, a story of distrust, adultery, and lies. The novel also highlights the dictatorship of a patriarchal society where young girls were married off to much older men and left to become widows at an early stage that cased their route to freedom. Bengali poet and Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore brought into the forefront the sexual desires of a woman, which even today is considered a taboo. Reflecting his liberal approach to the topic, Shishir Kobita, probably his most lyrical novel, presents Lavanya as a strong willed, highly educated, free spirited woman who hails from a middle class family. A woman with high ethos, Lavanya falls in love with Oxford returned Amit. Though their love blossoms, Tagore, through Lavanya, raises questions about the very institution of marriage as the ultimate goal of a love affair. Tagore travels inside the traditional Indian concept of an arranged marriage through the life of Haimanti, a lead protagonist of the book of the same name. The story takes on the whimsicality and hypocrisy of the 19th and 20th century middle class society that restricts Haimanti peace period. Actually, her age was given wrong when she was married, but that was the problem, and there was property dispute. And Haimanti comes out of all that and convinces and improves the relationship also, taking another dig at the patriarchal rules that probably still persist. Yeah. Even now, the patriarchal system is going on, and women are kept behind. The story revolves around a letter sent to a husband by his wife for the first time in 15 years, conveying how her intelligence became a hindrance to her livelihood and led to misery, and how writing poetry gave her solace and made her feel free from the patriarchal bond. Through Mrinal, Tagore reflected how a woman's life was meant not to be restricted within the inner walls of a home. Not just on pages, but Tagore's stories and novels have been brought alive a number of times on celluloid. Satyajit Ray went on to make a number of movies based on Tagore's writings. So did Rituparna Ghosh, and the legacy is still being carried on by other directors. What will be remembered forever about Tagore is his contribution to literary society and his attempt to create a world that is where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. So now I'm also interested in reading a story, a letter by a wife. So I hope I have enough time to read that story. I'll just take that letter and come. Sorry for the disruption.
That's okay,
Today,
ma'am.
today we have been married 15 years. The wife writes a letter to the husband. This is a very interesting letter, and imagine 100 years back this was published. And this has been translated by Prasenjit Gupta. Yet today we have been married 15 years, yet not until today have I written you a letter. I have always been close by your side. You have, you have heard many things from me, and so have I from you. But we have not had space enough to write a letter. Now I am in Puri. Puri is in Odisha, no? On a holy journey, and you are wrapped up in an office work. Your relationship to Calcutta is a snail to its shell. The city is stuck fast to you, body and soul. So you didn't apply for leave. It was the Lord's desire, and so was His granting me my leave application. I am Major Bob. That is the name of the lady, the second bride in your joint family. Today, 15 years later, standing at the edge of the ocean, I understand that I also have other relationships with the world and the world keeper. So I find the courage to write this letter. This is not a letter from your family's major bow, not from the second wife. Long ago in my childhood days, in the days when my preordained marriage to you was known only to the omniscient, one who writes our fate on our foreheads. My brother and I both came down with typhoid fever. My brother died. I survived. All the neighborhood girls said, Mrinal is a girl. That's why she lived. If she had been a boy, she could have been saved. Jomraj is wise in his deadly robbery. He only takes things value. No death then for me. It is to explain that at length that I sit down to write this letter. When your uncle, a distant relative, came with your friend Nero to view your prospective bride, I was 12. We lived in an inaccessible village where jackals would call even during the day. 14 miles from the railway station, my ox cart, then 6 more on an unpaved road by Palanquin. How we vexed they were. And on top of that, our East Bengal cookery. Even now, your uncle makes jokes about those dishes. Your mother wanted desperately to make up for the plain appearance of first bride with good looks of the second. Otherwise, why would you have taken all the time and trouble to travel to our village, distant village? In Bengal, no one has to search for jaundice, dysentery, or a bride. They come and cleave to you on their own and never want to leave. Mother's heart began to pound. Mother started repeating Durga's name. With what offering could I country priest satisfy a city god? All they could rely upon was their girl's appearance. But the girl herself had no vanity. Whoever came to see her, whatever price they offered for her, that would be her price. So even with the greatest beauty, the most perfect virtues, a woman's self doubt can never be dispelled. The terror of the entire household, even the entire neighborhood, settled like a stone in my chest. It was as if the day sky, its suffering light, all the powers of the universe were bailiffs to those two examiners. Seizing a 12-year-old village girl and holding her up to the stern scrutiny of those two pair of eyes, I had no place to hide. The benevolence wailed, settling the skies to mourn. I came to live in your house. At great length, the women tabulated all my shortcomings, but allowed that by and large I might be reckoned at beauty. And when my sister in law, my Didi, heard this, her face grew solemn. But I wonder what the need was for beauty. Your family didn't love me for it. Had my beauty been molded by some ancient sage from holy Ganga clay, then it might have been love. But the Creator had molded it only for His own pleasure, and so it had no value in your pious family. That I had beauty, it didn't take you long to forget, but you were reminded every step of the way that I also had intelligence. This intelligence must have lain deep within me, for it lingered in spite of the many years I spent merely keeping house for you. My mother was always very troubled by my intelligence. For a woman's, it was an affliction. If whose life is guided by boundaries, seeks a life guided by intelligence, she'll run into so many walls that she will shatter her forehead and her future. But what could I do? The intellect that other wives in the house lacked, the Lord, in a careless moment, had bestowed upon me. Now, whom could I return the excess to? Every day, you all rebuke me, precocious, impertinent girl. A bitter remark is the consolation of the inept. I forgive all your remarks. And I had something else. Outside all the domestic duties of your household, something had none of you knew. Secretly, I wrote poems. No matter if it was all rubbish, at least there The boundary wall of the inner compound could not stop me. There lay my freedom. There I could be myself. Whatever it was in me that kept your major bow detached from your family, you didn't like it, didn't even recognize it. In all these 15 years, none of you ever found out that I was a poet. Among the earliest memories that I have of your house, the one that comes to mind is your cowshed. Right next to the stairway leading up to the inner rooms was the room where the cows were kept. The tiny courtyard in front was all the space they had to roam. A clay through the for their fodder stood in one corner of the courtyard. In the morning, the servants had many things to do. All the mornings, starving cows would lick at the edges of the trough, bite at it, take chunks out of it. My heart cried for them. I was a village girl. When I first arrived at your house, those two cows and three calves struck me as being the only friends I had in the entire city. When I was a new bride, I could give my food to them. When I grew older, bantering acquaintances, observing the attention I showed to the cows, who expressed their suspicions about my family and ancestral occupation, all cowherds, they said. My daughter was born, died. She called to me too, to go with her. It had, if she had lived, she would have brought all that was wonderful, all that was lost into my life. From Major Bow, I would have become mother, and I and a mother even conformed to one narrow world is of the universe. I had the grief of becoming a mother, but not the freedom. I remember the English doctor's surprise upon entering the inner compound. When he saw the confinement room, he grew annoyed and began to scold. There's a small garden at the front of the house, and the outer rooms do not lack the furniture of decoration. The inner rooms are like the reverse of an embroidered pattern. On the inside, there is no binding, the starkness, no grace, no adornment. On the inside, the lights glimmer darkly. The breeze enters like a thief. The refuse never leaves the country yard. The blemishes on the walls, the floors are conspicuous and inerasable. But the doctor made one mistake. He thought this neglect would cause us sorrow. Just the opposite neglect is like ashes, ashes that keep the fire hidden within but do not let the warmth die out. When self respect ebbs, a lack of attention does not seem unjust. So it causes no pain. And that's why women are ashamed to experience grief. So I say this be your arrangement that women will suffer. Then it is best to keep them in neglect as far as possible with attention, love, suffering only grows worse. However, it didn't even occur to me to recall the existence of grief. In the delivery room, death came and stood by my head. I felt no fear. What is our life that we must fear death? Those whose life bonds have been knotted tight with love and care, they flinch before death. If Charm Raj had caught me that day and pulled them in the same way that a clump of grass can easily be pulled out from the loose earth, roots and all, I too would have come out in his hand. A Bengali girl will wish for death on the slightest pretext. But where is the courage in such a death? I am ashamed to die. Death is too easy for us. Like an evening star, my daughter glowed bright for a moment, then set. I hope I have time because three more pages are there. Is it okay? Shall I continue reading? And then she gets a friend, Bindu. I'll skip two pages and I'll tell you by without reading. Bindu comes to her house and she becomes very close to Major Bob. Then she was kept in a room. But in the story, it says Bindu had rashes on her body that became smallpox. So the whole thing turned. So at the end, it was Bindu who recognizes what was her problem, and then Bindu's fear ebbed. Another problem arose. She began to love me. This is from the story I'm reading. So much that it brought fear into my heart. I have never seen such an embodiment of love in real life. I have read of it in books, of this kind of intense attachment, and there too between women. Not for many years uh, I had occasion to remember that I was beautiful, that long forgotten beauty had charmed this plain looking girl. She would stare at my face, and the hope and trust in her eyes grew. She said to me, Didi, no one but me has seen this face of yours. She would become upset when I tied my hair myself. She liked to play with my hair, arranging it this way and that way. Apart from occasional invitation, there was really no need for me to dress up. But Bindu was eager, and every day she would ornament me one way or the other. She grew besotted with me. Then there is not even a yard of free space in the inner compound of your house. Near the north wall, next to the drain, somehow a mangosteen had taken root. The day I saw its new leaves budding forth, bright red, I would know that spring had truly touched the world. And when I saw in the middle of my routine life this neglected girl's heart and soul filling up with color, I realized there was a spring breeze of the inner world as well, a breeze that came from some distant heaven, not from the corner of the alley. This is about the letter from the wife to the husband. There are so many other women uh, in Tagore's short stories. These stories are short stories, and they are also made it into TV serials or movies, etc. Binodini. Binodini is from Chokarbari. She's a widow, but she is desiring to have some relationship. She wants to go out of the rules. She says, She rejects the strict rules widowed women in Bengal needed to adhere to. Binodini's character, despite the shades of grey, is refreshing as she does not accept her fate and attempts to seek what she feels she deserves. Binodini is reluctant to fit into the role of a lonely widow and is unwilling to forego her sexual and emotional desire. She is smart and educated and strives to be more than just an inauspicious widow. Towards the end of the story, Binodini retreats to living in women's shelters and bringing about as much change as she can to improve the condition of women. Binodini highlights the importance of education when she says, if I had been uneducated like other widows, I would have been able to easily endure the society's negligence. So because I'm educated, I'm trying to go out of the rules. Charulata, Charulata is a lonely housewife. She falls in love with her brother-in-law, and she those though Tagore doesn't show any sexual relationship with the brother-in-law. That brother-in-law gives her a lot of encouragement and belief in herself to believe herself. She is being uh, looked into. She's been carried, and she also writes, and she likes nature. Most of the time, husband is away with his business, so she doesn't know what to do with the time she gets in her hand. So she does something which is out of the, then that is Charulata. Garibala, Giribala, sorry, played by, is another lonely housewife whose husband beats her up, takes her jewelry, and elopes with his lover. That, then the name of the character is Lavanya, Labango, Labango. While spying on her husband, she becomes enamored with the theatre and in the Kalaka. She becomes a theatre artist. She finds her way out. That is one. And Mrinmayi in Sampati. Mrinmayi is a flamboyant young woman who struggles with lack of choice women had in her society. She's married off to an educated, well-off gentleman who falls in love with her unique persona. She does not accept her fate or reciprocate her husband's love and conjugal desires towards her. So Mrinal in Stiyapata, which I read now with the wife's letter. Kalyani from Aparichita. Kalyani played, this was in TV also. Kalyani, whose father breaks off her marriage on the wedding day due to groom's uncle's greed. So when the wedding is cancelled, what does she do? She finds her way. She is independent. And Mrigunayani in Kankar is also a very strong woman. Traces the story of ghost who narrates the story that led to her death to a stranger. This is a sort of an fantasy, like imagination, but somehow all these reading all these stories gives a certain insight into those days also. In Rabindranath Tagore's days, where he is seen in person all the different family situations, and he's written these stories. And it is fascinating to read, and it is really the way he says things are an impacting message to the women. I'm the person who loves to read his stories and take something good from him. And with the family, I'm also into a joint family. Came out of that, did all the work. Then after 40, I studied. I did my diploma in advertising. I worked when my children were big enough to study by themselves. Then I did my MA English Literature. I worked in advertising agency. I started my theater company. All that is a sort of it has given me a inner strength, and not only doing my routine cooking, serving, cleaning, sleeping. So I'm out of all that. So I'm the inspirer. So I think I have taken enough time. So can I close at the end? I'm very thankful to AJK College and also our coordinator, uh, Jasmine Priya and Anita, for coordinating this. I'm very happy to be with you. I would like to come in person to your college and do something in conduct theater workshops. That is what in general we do. Thank you so much. May I end here? Anita, are you there? Anita, can I end?